Now, if you are watching this, I don't know if this is going to be recorded on YouTube, and you're from Boston, you say, he did that same sermon in Boston on Saturday, so doesn't he have any more stuff? It's a great word. and under the theme of one Gordon-Conwell, I'm giving the same message at all campuses. That's my excuse. But the problem was, last Saturday, what I usually do, and I didn't do it today, you see I have paper, I usually email my text to my iPad, and then I do it off my iPad. And the last minute I can do some adjustments, kind of thing. But last Saturday, my Word document was invaded by demons. It was the strangest thing. It's Microsoft. There are demons in Microsoft. And it came up and it said, type in your password. And I said, I don't have to type in a password. I just save it. And I couldn't save it. It said, type in your password. And I tried my password, and somebody changed it or something. So there were demons in Microsoft, and I couldn't save it. I said, what do I do? So I Googled it. What do you do if you can't save it? And it comes up. And God was in Google. and my text was saved. It was a wonderful experience. And so the reason this is here is because God is in Google. So I start thankful this morning. Okay, listen carefully to my introductory sentence. You should listen carefully to every introductory sentence that you read in a text, because I know my editor says that sentence doesn't really introduce what you're going to say, so I know it's important. Listen to every first sentence in a movie. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. New beginnings are always difficult. So here's my first sentence. Well, it's actually about my 20th sentence, but I'm going to call it my first sentence. The book of Psalms connects our hearts to the heart of God, and every psalm reveals something of Jesus. Now, what do I mean? Every psalm gives us permission and help in thinking and saying these human and divine thoughts. We're given permission to feel and express our feelings as the psalmist does. When the psalmist cries out to God about injustice or about fear, those are the very words that we can say to God. The Psalms guide us in our prayers and our thoughts and our meditation. As a deer longs for flowing streams, so my heart longs for God. Thus, when God seems far away, we can pray Psalm 42. And when we mourn and all seems hopeless, we remember who God is by praying Psalm 56. You have kept count of my tossings. You have put my tears in your bottle. Are they not in your record? Oh, God remembers our tears even more than we do. That's amazing. But it's not only that the Psalms express what's in our heart, but they reveal the very heart of God to us. They remind us how we should think and even feel about life in light of God who is. We read and often have to remind ourselves that, quote, the Lord works vindication and justice for all who are oppressed, Psalm 103:6. Or how about this from Psalm 97? The Lord loves those who hate evil. He guards the lives of the faithful. And the many times that we think we have to work things out ourselves because God's not able to fix things again and again, something like this we read. But the Lord sits enthroned forever. He has established his throne for judgment. We don't need to fear. Or we read, the Lord is king forever and ever. Boom, rock solid. The Psalms accept and correct our thoughts and feelings. They remind us of who God is. Hearts are rectified in meditation on the Psalms. So what better way to start the academic year than to meditate on a psalm? Psalm 57 is one of the few psalms that we have a very clear context for. Most psalms just come as prayers and reflections, and we don't know a whole lot about the context of many of them. Here it says what was happening when David wrote this psalm. He was being pursued by King Saul. We all know the story. The future king is in a damp, dark cave, fearing for his life. So we could take time to study this and understand the mind of a poet and prince who is fearing for his life. That would be interesting. But we have permission to read this psalm and every psalm as a prayer, individually and communally, as we enter into it. Both Jews and Christians through the centuries use the Psalms as personal and corporate prayers. We sing them. They're a part of our liturgy. The first book published in North America was the Bay Psalm book. It's just singing the Psalms. We have permission. We have permission to pray this prayer of David for ourselves. And this is what we're going to do now. Of course, since I'm a Presbyterian, I will give you 3 points, and they will start with the same letter. Hopeless, help, heart. I feel all is hopeless. I cry for help. My heart is at peace. First, hopeless. Hopeless is the way the psalmist feels. I've preached many times at a group this size, and I'm sure many of you feel hopeless today. So let us dwell on this for a moment. This actually is our culture today. There's a lot of hopelessness in our culture today. I lie down among the lions that greedily devour human prey. Their teeth are spears and arrows. Their tongues are sharp swords. And then later in the psalm, they set a net for my steps. My soul was bowed down. This is the world we live in. I read the Chronicle of Higher Education last week. Matter of fact, I read it every week, and I read the emails they send me most every day because I'm involved in higher education. One of the continuing themes among educators is the high cost of counseling in colleges and universities today. Yes, there's a national crisis of depression among people who have an opportunity to get tertiary education in the wealthiest nation of the world. We are depressed. We feel like we're in a cave being pursued by an army, but really we're just looking at our phones and watching Netflix, and we're depressed. I have said many times that we all have one thing in common. My staff can tell you this. My family can tell you this. That one thing we all have in common is that we're insecure. And social media makes us more insecure. But I think I need to follow that up with one other thing that's becoming more true, and that's that many of us are getting more and more depressed and more hopeless. How am I going to pay for this, you might be thinking? When am I going to have time to read all these books? What if they find out I don't really understand what I'm reading? Or for faculty, when am I going to have time to grade all these papers? Or for me, how can I remember all those names? And so it goes on and on. Some of us have deeper hopelessness. Family members have cancer. Marriages seem irreparable. Whether it is now in you, or if it's now in a close relative or a neighbor, hopelessness is in our air. But the psalm reminds us that the final word is what is really real, and it's not hopelessness. Look at the end of verse 6. They dug a pit in my path, and I like the way Ed read it, but they have fallen into it themselves. There's a shade of hope, because the whole picture is not one of despair. And isn't that typical? Haven't you tried to encourage a depressed person and found out they just can't see any light at all? You'd say something, yeah, what about this? Oh, no, but then this will probably happen. Yeah, what about this? Oh, no, they'll probably have an accident. Yeah, but what about this? They just can't even see any light. But every once in a while, just a little curtain comes back. It's there, even if we can't see it. We remind them as we try to encourage them, and then just maybe they will admit some slight hope that they can hold on to. Oh, yes, they have fallen into it themselves. Secondly, help. There's a cry for help as a last resort. I can't fix things. I can't get out of this mess. Help. Just last Saturday, I heard the testimony of a new student who'd been in prison for about 7 years. And I said, hey, tell me your story. I often teach evangelism classes, and I collect stories of conversion. And he said he felt his marriage was going to fall apart. He stayed in prison. His wife was drifting his way. His kids were drifting away. I said, what do you do? What did you do? He says, I just cried out to the Lord for help. I wasn't a Christian. I didn't know if there was a God. I just cried out to God for help. That's right. It's the really basic core Christian prayer. Help me, save me. That's a Christian prayer. It doesn't say, look, God, I've been doing this and I've been working on this, so, how does that count? No. The Christian prayer is just very simple. Save me. These prayers capture it all. I can't help myself. I'm in trouble. I have nowhere to turn. Please, God, you do it. You save me. And so the psalm starts out with a cry for help. Be merciful to me. I cry to the Most High God. But this is not a helpless cry for help. It is a hopeful cry for help. The psalmist knows who God is. I cry to God Most High, to God who fulfills his purpose for me. He will send from heaven and save me. You see, he knows to whom he is speaking. When we cry for help, we do so remembering to whom we are crying. He is the one who can protect me. He is my refuge. He is the one who sends forth his steadfast love. What a great phrase that is. I love that one. Have you ever thought of God sending his steadfast love? God is a sending God. I'm a missiologist. Whenever I see the word send, it just jumps out off the page. So God is a sending God. It makes perfect sense. Send forth your love, God. What a great prayer. Send forth your love, God. Send your love to my family. Send your love to my spouse, to my children. Send your love to my street. Send your love to my block, to my neighborhood, my office building. Send your love, Lord. Lord, send your love to me. I need your love. I don't feel loved. I don't feel lovable. Please, send your love. You see how the Psalms help us pray? They help us think. They help us feel. Finally, heart. Heart. Our life, our health, our thriving, it's all a matter of the heart. Listen to the final verses in verses 7 to 10. My heart is steadfast, O God. My heart is steadfast. I will sing and make music. Awake, my soul. Awake, harp and lyre. I will awaken the dawn. Now that's some serious singing. I will awaken the dawn. I will praise you, O Lord, among the nations. I will sing you among the peoples, for great is your love, reaching to the heavens. Your faithfulness reaches to the skies. I long to have steadfast love and a settled heart, don't you? A heart at peace, a heart that sings and makes melody. But what is a settled heart? A settled heart, friends, has good theology. You know why I say that? The people that are worrying and taking all the burdens on themselves, they have to work 7 days a week, 24/7, that's bad theology. A settled heart has good theology. Jesus is on the throne. I can't do it all. Save me, Lord. A settled heart has good theology. A settled heart is one that remembers God. A settled heart is a heart that remembers what God has done. A settled heart, friends, a settled heart is the heart of Jesus. That is what we want. We want the heart of Jesus. When we look out at people, we see faces, we read the newspaper, we want the heart of Jesus. Yes, I said at the beginning of this message, every psalm speaks to us about Christ. I think I found it. Every psalm points to Jesus Christ. In the early church, the way that you would exegete or explain every psalm was to talk about how it was Christological. It's a good exercise. How it pointed to Jesus. I mentioned to the class last night, just so some of you may have fallen asleep because I talked too long. I mentioned that already, I guess. But anyway, I was talking about the entrance exam at the School of Nisibis. It was a very simple exam. You didn't have to write an essay or anything. You just had to memorize the Psalms. All of them. That's all you had to do. So that's what we're going to do next year. Good thing you got in this year, right? Because they're about Jesus. So they said, we're all going to preach about Jesus, so we got to memorize the Psalms. Every psalm points us to Jesus Christ. Now, I said at the beginning, every psalm speaks about Christ. Now, every psalm points to Jesus Christ. In the early church, that was the case, but how it pointed to Christ is something interesting. Here we see the psalmist ends talking about the very heart of Jesus. Jesus is the one who will bring glory among the peoples. Did you notice that? You're thinking, oh, that's a mission guy. He read peoples. He's probably going to mention that. He did. Jesus is the one who causes us to sing praises among the nations. There it is, the peoples, the nations. Jesus is the one who has steadfast love. Jesus is the one who is faithful. Jesus is the one who is steadfast. This is our hope, to open our heart to the heart of Jesus. But Pastor, what does it mean to open my heart to the heart of Jesus? Hold on. I've been preaching this way. All of a sudden, I'm going to make a turn. Now, I talked to the dean about this, Jeff Arthurs, and he says, you can't do that. You got to keep moving. You get to your final point, and you got to nail it. I said, no, I'm going to move them this way. All of a sudden, I'm going to turn. So here we go. We're going to turn right here, okay? You were thinking it. We've been talking about the need for the individual, for you to have peace with God, right? We've been talking about our heart needs to be right. We've talked about how we need to be saved, we ourselves. But now we're going to talk about the world and the pain and the suffering of others. To have the heart of Jesus does mean to be at peace and steadfast and faithful, but it's much more. To have the heart of Jesus is to have the heart of suffering for those who suffer. That's the heart of Jesus. It's to have the heart of anguish for those who are treated unjustly. It's to have a heart of pain for those who have never heard the love of God. In short, it's to have the heart of Jesus, to suffer with Jesus for the world. I'm so committed to that I titled a book that way. You can't get away from it. We're invited into the life of Jesus. Was it not necessary that the Messiah would suffer and then be received to glory? We're invited into the life of Jesus to share the heart of Jesus for the world. And so our psalm ends by talking about the peoples and the nations. The praise and presence of the heart of Christ moves out of the assembly, out of the church, into the world. We could add to this by saying the psalm ends by talking about neighborhoods. It doesn't exactly, but it sort of does. And cities and apartment buildings, and people are homeless, and people have no place that's safe. And this is the movement of the psalm, from my hopelessness to my cry for help, to my healing, to my hurting for others. The heart of Jesus. The heart of Jesus is for others. It sends out love. Jesus' heart is a missionary heart. It sends love because it feels the pain and the suffering. So as we start this academic year, Gordon-Conwell Theological Seminary, I pray that you would recognize your hopelessness and admit it. I pray you would cry for help to God. I pray you would receive the heart of Christ, which is steadfast and broken. In this way, we'll be able to say, be exalted, O God, above the heavens. Let your glory be over all the earth, including our little corner of New England. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, amen.